While people are arriving, I will just chat a little bit. So I am Helen, and if you don't already know me, I run a digital marketing agency called Ascendancy, and we specialize in working with e-commerce businesses to help them get more sales. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today, is the challenge of maintaining and building on 2020 growth. And with me here today, we have our fabulous guest speaker, Laura G from Rebound Returns. We invited Laura to come and join us today because I know returns is such a huge issue for e-commerce businesses, and it's not an area that I know very much about. Laura is going to speak about that today. Also here from the Ascendancy side of things, we have Rihanna. Rihanna is my wing person and is going to be letting people in who are in the waiting room and pressing the record button and important functions like this. And if my internet cuts out halfway through my presentation, she's going to tap dance.
Yeah, okay. It's been a few years, but I'll give it a
go. Keep you entertained while I attempt to get back in again. Hopefully we won't have any technical hitches today, though. Okay, so it is 5 past, so we will crack on. We did say to people, we are expecting a few more delegates, but we did say to people, don't worry if you can't make it at the last minute, because we're going to record it and send it out. So anybody who's not already here will be getting a recording anyway. And I see a couple more people are just joining as well. Hello, everybody. If you've just joined us, you haven't missed anything. I've just been explaining that I'm Helen from Ascendancy. We've got Laura from Rebound Returns here, and Rihanna is operating the mute button and generally being my wing person. So I'm going to crack on now as it's 5 past 10. And I am going to show you my presentation. You are very welcome at any point while I'm speaking. If you've got a question or whatever, pop it in the chat box. And then when I get to the end of my presentation, Rihanna will tell me what's in the chat box in terms of questions. And obviously at that point as well, you can always unmute and tell me your question as well, if your microphone is working. So let's crack on. As I said, we are recording this event. If you could please keep your devices on mute while someone else is speaking, that will just be really helpful, so we don't get any background noise or horrible feedback sounds or anything. So let's crack on. Okay, so give us a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Hurrah! So my topic has come about really because of the conversations we've been having over the last few months with the clients that we work with. And the common theme that's cropped up is this. So this is what 2020 looked like for our clients. Pretty crazy. I actually can't remember which specific industries these charts relate to, but what you can see there is they're not all the same, but what they have in common is an incredible increase in demand for their products during 2020. At various different points in time. Some of these businesses are seasonal, so as well as the COVID massive demand, they also had variations across the year in terms of seasonality as well. But suffice to say that for the majority of our e-commerce clients, 2020 was just completely bonkers. huge growth. Obviously, that's not the case for all e-commerce businesses. So I know some e-commerces have been very badly negatively affected. For example, if they sell products that relate to facilities that have been closed for the last year. So not everybody's done well, but on the whole, most people have, particularly people selling stuff for the home and garden. And obviously, if you look at the statistics, online sales grew overall by 46% in 2020 compared to 2019, which is amazing. And the largest increase since 2008, when obviously things were growing a lot faster because they were in their infancy. So, I mean, how was your 2020 is my question. Did it look something like this? I suspect for many of you, it did. And so what people have had to do, because their business has suddenly multiplied itself overnight, they've had to take on additional costs. So people have taken on new staff, they've invested in new systems, they've brought on new product lines, perhaps they've even moved to a bigger warehouse. And then what do we see? Obviously, the physical shops start reopening, and we start seeing headlines like this, very alarming headlines such as online sales decline as shops open. Will consumers ditch online shopping once lockdown ends? And so on. So the conversations I've been having with a lot of my e-commerce clients are that, 2020 was great and they maximized it while they had the opportunity, but now they're thinking, where are we going to go from here? Are we going to go a little bit backwards? I really don't want to make anyone redundant when I've only just brought them on board and I've taken on this extra large warehouse, and now do I really need it? So a lot of people feeling quite sort of worried about the future. I think everybody feels the future is going to be generally positive, but what's the immediate future going to look like, and how can we consolidate our position and make sure that we keep growing and don't sort of slip backwards? So one of the other challenges is that forecasting is really difficult this year. So we've been having this problem when we've been looking at clients are saying, well, what targets shall we set for the year? How much should we try and grow our traffic? And I'm saying to them, I don't really think it's going to be quite hard to beat last year, in terms of traffic. So we can't just take last year's figures and add 20% to them, can we? Because, not every year is going to be like last year. It was pretty weird. We don't know, for example, will the particular boom that we're having at the moment in the sort of house and home garden market, will that persist? Or will everyone have done all of their household projects by this time next year? And for a while, nobody will need to buy any garden furniture? We don't know. So what can we do in terms of planning and forecasting, and how can we build on and consolidate our 2020 growth? This presentation is not intended to give you all the answers by any means, because the answers will be different for different businesses and you'll all be at different stages in your journey. You'll be getting your traffic from different places. You'll have different margins. But I thought what I'd show you is a few of the different things, the different conversations we've been having with clients, and hopefully you'll get some ideas from some of those. So this is where I think most of the businesses we work with are. So you're probably wondering what's this meant to mean. So this chart basically shows you the blue area is the overall size of the market. So let's say, for example, that you sell gardening gloves online, and the blue area is showing you the overall size of the gardening gloves market. And at the moment, the bit of the market that you have is the yellow bit. So your 2019 looked a bit like this. So this is your percentage of the market, that's your market share. In 2020, your sales grew considerably, although it doesn't look huge on the chart, but but they grew in line with the growth in the market. And now, if we do nothing differently, what's going to happen in 2021 is that the market is going to be bigger than it was in 2019, but perhaps not quite as big as it was in 2020. So you are potentially going to slip a little bit backwards in 2021 compared to 2020, which you probably don't want to happen. That's the scenario that most of the clients we work with are in. They're not the lead player in their market necessarily. They've got a chunk of it. Of course, what all they need to do to continue growing is take a bigger slice of the pie and increase their market share. And then they are continuing their growth. Sounds really simple on paper. So how do we, in practice, take a bigger share of the market? I would say the first thing is that it means not just carrying on doing what you did before, exactly the same as you did it before. Because if you want to grab more of your market, a bigger piece of the pie, you need to do what you're doing better. And I believe there are 4 key areas that you can work on to do that. So first off, you can obviously get more traffic to your website. That's pretty obvious, isn't it? You can improve your website conversion rate is the second thing. So if you're currently converting 2% of your visitors into customers, why not try and convert 3% of your visitors into customers? That would make a big difference to your sales, even if you didn't have any extra website traffic. Even if you had less website traffic, you might still do better if you improve your website conversion rate. Another thing to work on is increasing your average order value. And of course, you can get your customers to buy from you more often, so you could generate more repeat sales. So these are the 4 key areas that you can work on to keep growing your business, even if the size of the market is going to shrink slightly in the short-term future. Now, a thing to note is I'm not going to talk about third-party platforms today. So all the tips that I'm going to give you, they all relate to things that you can do on your own website where you own the customer. So I'm not talking about Amazon or anything like that here. That's a whole different ball game and perhaps a different event. But we'll get your feedback later on what other types of event you think would be useful. So just to take each of those 4 areas in turn. So the first area on my slide was improving website traffic. Now, you probably don't need me to tell you about all the different ways there are of getting website traffic because you're running an e-commerce business. I'm sure you're pretty well versed in all of these things already. But just to quickly run over the different ways that you can increase your traffic. First of all, you've got organic traffic that you get on merit and without paying for every single click. So obviously that means search engine optimization. You can do a better job of that. Obviously you could get more traffic through organic social media as well, if that works in your particular marketplace. So the way I see, when I recommend different strategies to a client, I tend to recommend search engine optimization and Google Ads to the people where the customer already knows what they're looking for. So they are searching for a specific product and they want it right now. Search is exactly the right place to be. If you are selling a product that people don't know exists, so it's something novel and different and people don't know it exists, they're not going to be Googling it. And social media there can be absolutely amazing in terms of raising awareness of novel and interesting products. Most businesses obviously want to use a combination of both in different proportions. Something I've put on there that I wasn't sure you'd all be aware of is that over the last few months, some of Google's shopping listings have actually become free. And so if you set your merchant center up correctly with Google, you can actually get some free traffic from Google Shopping. So make sure you've got that set up, whatever you do, because you may as well as not. It doesn't cost you anything. It's just a little bit of palaver to set it up, and then you've got some free traffic. Then obviously the other way to increase your traffic is to pay for it. a lot of businesses are quite reluctant to spend significant amounts of money on paid traffic. But my rule of thumb is just, if you're getting a good return from it, then why would you not spend more? So paid traffic, obviously, you can buy from Google via Google Ads. And for the e-commerce market, Google Shopping is basically where it's at. The majority of our e-commerce clients, the majority of their paid traffic is coming from Google Shopping. But obviously, we mustn't forget paid social as well, such as Facebook ads, for example. So there you go. If you want to increase your traffic, those are the things you need to be looking at, as I'm sure you know. Now, on to Google Shopping in particular. I just wanted to emphasize that knowing your numbers is the key to it all. So if you're going to pay for, and this obviously applies not just to Google Shopping, but to any kind of online advertising that you're paying for. The key to it all is knowing what your target return on ad spend is. So for example, if for every £1 you spend, you need to get at least £4 back to be able to say this is a profitable sale. That's your target return on ad spend. So some of our clients, typically their target return on ad spend is at least 400%. And for some particular clients, it's 1,000% or higher, that they have to get £10 back for every £1 they spend for the advertising to be worth it. So the other thing to bear in mind about knowing your target return on ad spend is that it might be different at different times of year, and also for different product groups. So that's, you can get quite sophisticated in terms of running all sorts of different campaigns with different targets. And with Google Ads, you can do a lot of forecasting using a tool called the Performance Planner, which is really, really useful. Takes into account seasonality and so on, and suggests how much budget you ought to be spending at different times of year. So I just wanted to raise your awareness of those things with Google Shopping. Now on to our second key area for taking more market share. And I would say this is the one that's perhaps a little bit less obvious, and people probably don't put enough focus on it generally when I speak to clients. So here are some things that you can do to improve your conversion rate. So these are all things where we've had conversations with clients about these things, and that they've implemented things that have made a difference. So the really obvious thing is to review your pricing. So if you are the most expensive player in the market, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the wrong decision, but it is going to affect your conversion rate. So just be clear on where you sit with regard to pricing within your marketplace. Whatever your pricing is, you should be really running regular promotions. And this is key, particularly in terms of getting people to keep coming back to your website, to keep their interest and keep bringing existing customers back. One of the key things that makes people drop out of a shopping cart is your delivery costs. So it's always worth reviewing those. If you can offer free delivery over a threshold or free delivery across everything, it probably will improve your conversion rate. And it may or may not be the right decision, though, depending on your costs. A tool that I'm always recommending people install on their website is Hotjar, or Mouseflow is another similar one. It records where people's mouse is going on the screen when they're using your website, which can be incredibly insightful. So it can help you to understand at what point on your website do people get frustrated and give up and exit the site, and sort of going like clicking on things that aren't clickable, or adding things to the basket and then they don't go in the basket, or they don't notice where the basket is. All that sort of thing can be seen on recordings and can make a huge difference to your understanding of why more people aren't buying from you. Search box is so important for an e-commerce site, and making sure people can find the products that you want them to find when they search for particular things, and making sure that they can navigate to your products and find them within the minimal number of clicks possible. One thing you can do is, when you've identified some ideas for how to improve conversion rate, you can use something called split testing. So you can split your traffic between a page which is, unchanged, and then another version of the page that has got some changes to it. So for example, one of the pages has got different photos to the other. So you're testing if you put like lifestyle style photographs on a product, do you sell more of the product? So you can split test your traffic and measure the difference that a change has made. And then if you find it's made a positive difference, roll it out across the site. So something else that people don't do enough. Product photography is so important. And I'm trying to find a speaker actually for one of these events. So if anyone knows a really good product photographer who has got lots to say about how to sell more products by having the right photos, please send them my way. Improving your product descriptions. Obviously, one of the common reasons people don't buy products is because they don't know whether it's going to fulfill their requirement or not, because you've missed something important out of the product description. Having more ways to pay. This is something that's very much on my mind at the moment. So on most e-commerce stores, even no matter how mobile friendly they are, the conversion rate on mobile devices is normally a lot lower than it is on desktop, just because it's such a faff to try and buy something on a mobile phone, unless you can do it with one click. So having payment methods like Apple and Google Pay can be really tremendously helpful to improve your conversion rate on mobile devices. And then buy now, pay later, such as Klarna, for example. I'm looking for a case study actually where somebody's implemented buy now, pay later on their website. And so we can see the before and after difference in the conversion rate. So if anybody is doing that right now and wants to be a case study, let me know that as well. That would be great. And customer reviews and ratings is also so important to improve conversion rate, because it's going to give your visitors the reassurance that the products are good. And even if the product has flaws, that they're warned in advance of what those flaws might be, and that they're buying the product in the knowledge that, somebody said whatever somebody said in the review. And other trust symbols as well. So a trust symbol is anything that makes the customer trust you more. So that's things like, having loads of people following you on Facebook, or having been on television and having a great big icon that says, as seen on the 6 o'clock news, or as seen in the Daily Mail or something. So just generally making sure people trust you. I'm not sure being seen in the Daily Mail would make me trust you, but So the third area was increasing average order value. Now this is another really interesting area, and one of the things that I always recommend to people is creating product bundles. So for example, if you are selling something that relates to a hobby, can you make like different variations of starter kits that have everything somebody needs to get started? Having 3 for 2s is another good one, or indeed 2 for 1s, or but 3 for 2s, you've sold 2 rather than 1. And similar promotions along those lines. So anything that gets people to buy slightly more. Think creatively about it and how that could work for your business. You obviously offering free delivery over a designated amount. So, if you spend £60 or more, you'll get free delivery. That hopefully will encourage people to stick something extra in their cart just to get over the threshold. Likewise, you can give a discount over a certain amount of spend. So, if you spend £60, we'll send you a voucher off your next purchase or something like that. And obviously, there are lots of opportunities to upsell to people as they go through the checkout process. So recommending complementary products or insurance, that's the one that I always decline. But I'm sure people must take up the offer. So upselling at the checkout and indeed further back down the process as well can be tremendously helpful. Did you know that if you buy this product, you also need this other thing as well? And then there's the issue of getting customers to buy from you more often. Now, one of the things that I find with clients is that they tend to underuse their existing client base. So they have had, 64,000 people buy from them over the last 2 years. And then I say to them, well, what do you do in terms of reaching out to your existing customers? And they're like, well, we send them a newsletter every now and again. Do more with your customer base. You've got all these people there. They're much more likely to buy from you than a new customer is. So you should be sending them stuff often. And I know you're probably afraid of annoying people by emailing them too often, for example. But I can tell you that emailing people quite often does actually work. It will annoy some people and they will unsubscribe, but generally it will be worth doing. So send people offers by email, send them discounts, send them advance notice of new products that are about to come in, or even exclusive products. So that's using your email list to the full is so important. And we generally see conversion rates are much, much better from existing customers than they are from new customers, because the customers already know and love you. Well, hopefully they love you anyway. If your products are something that people need to regularly reorder, so for example, if you were selling vitamin supplements, or if you were selling, refills, ink cartridges or something, people are going to run out of those and need to reorder them on a regular basis. So is there something you can do in terms of creating a subscription service that automatically reorders the product? How convenient for the customer and how convenient for you as well. And the other thing that I think people don't do enough of is analyze the data. So if I say to a client, how often do your existing clients order from you in a typical year? So, if you acquire a new customer, how many times will they typically reorder from you over the subsequent year? And so what are they worth to you? What's a typical client worth? I don't think I've ever had anybody answer that, or at least not answer it without going away and running the numbers first. And you should know that, really, because if you knew, for example, that every new client you acquired would be worth £500 to you over the coming year, even though the initial sale was only worth £50, it's probably going to be worth spending quite a lot on. So even if you're going to make a loss on the initial sale, it would still be worth advertising to that person, because you know that they're highly likely to buy from you again, and that those existing sales then will be profitable. So how much is it worth spending on acquiring a new customer? That's something that's important to know, because then they will become a repeat customer. And another thing you can use, obviously, with your online advertising is using retargeting on your paid ads to bid differently for existing customers. So let's say, for example, someone's been to your website, they've bought from you before. You then put those customers into a remarketing list. And next time that customer goes to Google and searches for a product that is a product that you sell, you can use the fact that Google can go, that's an existing customer, and just bid a little bit more for that person, so that your advert appears, right in their face, because it's probably worth bidding a bit more for that person because they are highly likely to buy. Another thing some of our clients have is a reward scheme as well. So you sort of collect points on your purchases, to encourage the feeling of being in some kind of club, get people to keep coming back and buying more from you. So there's so many things that you can do. The important thing to remember, though, is that it's not just a case of sort of picking one thing and running with it, because normally what happens is that clients have, they make small improvements in a number of areas. And then by making multiple small improvements, it has a compound effect. So that's what I'm going to show you with the next pair of slides. So in this example, we've got a client who their clicks are costing them on average 50p. And they've got a budget per month of £100. So not very realistic, but it makes the numbers nice and round for me. So they are spending £100. It's costing them 50p a click. So obviously they get 200 clicks. And on their website, they convert 2% of their visitors into customers. That then translates into 4 sales. And their average order value is £50. So they have just generated £200 worth of sales from an advertising spend of £100. So I don't know about you, but that does not sound like a great deal to me. So it's probably not going to be a profitable campaign, is it? Unless your margin is spectacular. I can't see how you could make that work. So this is a failing Google Ads campaign you've got here. But then what happens if we manage to slightly improve all 3 of these things in bold on the left? We get a compound effect. So in this example, we've managed to get the cost per click down from 50p to 30p by managing our Google Ads very well. And we have managed to get the website conversion rate up from 2% to 3%. So again, like we're not being super ambitious here. We're just trying to improve everything slightly. And now we've got the average order value to £60 instead of £50. Just look at the difference it has made. So we've now got 333 clicks, out of which we've generated 10 sales. And so our total sales from our £100 investment are £600. So spending £100 to generate £600 is a much better deal. That may still not be good enough in your market, but for a lot of people, that would then be the level at which things started to get really interesting. And now they're going to put their £100 budget up massively because they're reassured that they're going to get the return they need from it. So I just wanted to highlight really the fact that when we see clients multiplying their results several times over, it's not normally as a result of just doing one thing. It's normally the result of making multiple small improvements that have a compound effect. So just to finish up before we take some questions, my take on this, or my summary of this presentation is that, yes, e-commerce might well drop back a bit in 2020, 2021 and 22 when compared to 2020. But obviously the future for e-commerce is bright. I don't think anybody doubts that. And you can capitalize right now by just taking a larger market share. And it really shouldn't be that hard. It's about doing multiple small things right. It is not about there being a massive elephant in the room and you just get rid of the elephant and then Bob's your uncle. You are paying for your own rocket into space because you've become a billionaire. It's usually a case that you have to do lots of small things right. And it's also all about knowing your numbers. And this is the number one beef I have with a lot of our clients, to be honest, is that they don't always know what they want us to achieve. They will say things like, I just want more sales. Or, you know, I don't know what I should be aiming for, but I know it should be better than this. Which, you know, really what we need to know as a partner working with clients is what are their ambitions? So where do they want to get to? How quickly do they want to get there? What is the target return on ad spend? So how much are we allowed to spend to acquire a customer? And does that vary across different products? What's their conversion rate? How can we improve the conversion rate? All of those things. So knowing your numbers and not being scared of data. We love, our ideal client is somebody who loves spreadsheets. Because marketing in terms of e-commerce is very much about data. There is some creativity, but the core skill set that you need is to understand the numbers. So, Rihanna, did we have any questions in the chat box as we went along?
Yeah, Helen had a couple of questions. Let's have a look. So Helen put in, is the performance planner part of the Google Ads / Merchant Center? Oh, that's Helen.
Yeah, so the performance planner is in Google Ads rather than in Merchant Center.
And then you also popped in, didn't you, Helen, that you do BNPL but wouldn't know where to check the difference in the conversion rates without some help.
Yes. Okay. So, Helen, is that something that you implemented from the beginning, or is it something that you added partway along?
Added partway along. So we probably could look it up if I can remember when I did it. I'll have to look at my change log.
Yes, exactly. So,
Yeah.
so Helen, as in Helen Bundle of Love, I have worked with before, so I do know that she has an excellent change log. And this is something actually that I think I should recommend to everybody. When you're making lots of changes to a website and to your digital marketing, and then the results change, so suddenly you're doing better or doing worse, how are you going to know which thing that you did was the thing that caused the change? So documenting everything you do on your website and digital marketing is so important, so you can look back and see, oh dear, our sales have really dropped off. What's going on? If you have a look back and see what changes you made just before that period, that could be really helpful. So yeah, keep a change log. There's another tip. So yes, look, for your scenario, Helen, what you would do is you would look at 2 comparable date periods, one before the change and one after the change, and you would look in analytics at your conversion rate.
Okay.
So this all depends on having e-commerce tracking in place in analytics for a comparable date period before and after. So another top tip for everybody is to make sure your analytics is accurate, or as accurate as it ever can be, because it's never completely accurate.
I'll have a look then and see if it would be any good for a case study for you. It's not Klarna or anything, it's just something that I've implemented myself. But yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that would be really interesting, Helen. So thank you. Any more questions, Rihanna, from the chat box?
No, I have one though, if that's okay. I just thought I'd go one out there.
Fire away.
You've given some really great tips, and obviously everyone is really busy. Do you have one or two things that people should do first to implement in their businesses?
You were breaking up a bit there, Rihanna.
Oh, sorry.
I think you were asked whether there were a couple of things people should do first.
Yeah, that's it.
Wow. I wasn't expecting a really difficult question from one of my colleagues. No, I think the very first thing that people should do is make sure that they have accurate data in analytics, and make sure that they know their numbers. So to check what your conversion rate is, to check what return you're getting from your ad spend, and to know what the target is. So I know that's very boring, but very first thing is make sure that your data is right, and make sure that you know what you want. And then I would say, out of all the things we've done that have made a huge difference to a client's results, probably the best return would come from conversion rate improvements. The reason being that if you can get your conversion rate from 2 to 3%, suddenly you have increased your sales by 50% without any additional advertising costs. but it's not something that people do often. So for most e-commerce businesses, there is some low-hanging fruit in that area.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also probably the hardest, because unless you have got an in-house web development team, you're probably going to come up with some roadblocks where your web team want to charge you a fortune for doing it, or where they say it can't be done, or it can't be done until the 15 months have passed or something. So it can be, on the practical level, it can be difficult to implement. So guys, fire some more questions at me. Or has anybody got any thoughts? Does anybody have any additional points that they could share with the rest of the delegates about what made a difference to them?
I've got a point to interject, obviously not a retailer, but I thought the point that you made around getting product photography and product descriptions right was really interesting, because obviously that can kind of discourage people from making a purchase if the photo is not clear what they're getting, if the description kind of isn't clear what they're getting either. But on the flip side of that, it could also lead to a disappointed customer. So if the photography or the description is misleading, if they buy something and it's not what they expect, then they're going to return it to you. So it could be kind of, that's obviously then extra cost for you to have to go through the process of processing that return. So it's also a case of not just looking at the journey from what is discouraging customers from buying, but also what is going to be disappointing to them. Is there anything that's misleading them? Because ultimately a return means that something's gone wrong. So it's important to kind of spot the areas in that buying journey where something hasn't gone to plan. And the product photography and the product descriptions are often a big part of that. It's quite often that clothing retailers will, put their models in clothes and then use clips to pull the dresses in to make them look like they fit better than they do. The descriptions won't be accurately describe kind of what kind of fabric it's made from or anything like that. So I think it's really important to look at those from a returns perspective as well as the kind of conversion perspective as well.
So I do believe that that's a really nice transition into your presentation, Laura. Unless anyone has any... Yeah, we actually didn't plan this, guys. That was spontaneous. Does anybody have any more questions for me before we move on to Laura? Because that is a really good point, that some of the things that you do from a marketing perspective can also have an impact on your returns too. So if there's no more questions, Laura, I will hand over to you and I will stop sharing my lovely question mark. There we go. I'm looking forward to this.
Great, thanks. Hopefully you've all got my screen now. You could shout up that you can see my screen, because I can't see you.
I can see it. I can see it, Laura.
Brill. So good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this hot day. I'm hoping that you can't hear my aircon unit roaring in the background, but if you can, just let me know. I'm Laura G. I'm the marketing manager at Rebound Returns. We are a returns management company, so helping online retailers manage their returns. And today I'll be going through how you can revolutionize your return and craft a great returns experience. So whether you're already established and perhaps need to look at improving the returns process for your customers, or whether you're looking at starting an e-commerce business and just haven't given returns much thought, I'll be taking you through what customers expect from a returns experience. Because as Helen mentioned, online sales increased by 46% in 2020. So obviously the byproduct of that is that returns are increasing as well. So it's really important to get your returns proposition right from the off. So just to give you a bit of a background about Rebound then, we've been established for 7 years now, and we're handling 40 million returns transactions per year for over 500 retail brands. We've got over 270 return carrier services and over 40 return experts, one of which being myself, working for the Rebound team. We're also multi-award winning. So we've won awards such as the Lloyd's National Business Scale Up of the Year Award and been featured in the Sunday Times Tech Track, as well as the International Track as well, where we placed 19th this year. which was a huge achievement, and the team definitely had a few champagnes to celebrate that one. And we've also been featured in publications such as BBC News, Mail Online, as well as some retail publications such as Draper's, and that's always talking about returns and how the returns market and the e-commerce market is changing. So I thought I'd take it right back to basics to begin with and kind of go through what do we mean by returns. If you've ever bought something online, the chances are you've needed to make a return, whether you're buying kind of clothing for a night out or something for your house. You've probably opened a parcel and had a bunch of paperwork falls out, which can be include but not limited to those pre-printed return labels, like they're on the PD paper. HelloFresh vouchers always seem to make their way into outbound parcels. Virgin wine vouchers. I swear I've got enough virgin wine vouchers that I could stock a bar. So you're probably quite familiar with buying something online and just having absolutely loads of returns paperwork, and then needing to go through the process of returning something if it doesn't fit or if it's not right for your home. And the frequency of those returns really depends on what you're returning, because online return rates vary by sector. So if you're buying women's wear, the return rate can be around 40%. So 40% of what people are buying online for women's wear ends up getting sent back to the retailer. And that can be for a number of different reasons. Perhaps it doesn't fit, the material that isn't quite right. And like I mentioned before, those product photography and product descriptions has a big part to play there as well. Interestingly, this is just around 20% for menswear. I personally think this is because men have much more kind of rigid fit guidelines. You know, their trousers are all done on waist sizes rather than mystery size 14 that seems to vary from retailer to retailer. And then for beauty and cosmetics, it's around 3%. And the reason that's so much lower is for beauty and cosmetics, it's much, much easier for the shopper to know what they're getting. So, you know, for a lipstick, there's no reason for that to like not fit. It's literally just going to come down to the fact that perhaps you're not a fan of the color or the coverage or things like that. And then also, obviously, at the point that you've tried it on, nobody wants to be sending back a half-used lipstick. So quite unsurprisingly, that does have a much lower return rate. So where do Rebound fit into this journey? So just to help you kind of understand Rebound and where we fit in, is we help retailers achieve smarter and more sustainable returns whilst enhancing the customer experience. And we do that through a combination of our returns technology and our reverse logistics as well. So a very simple breakdown on the right-hand side is that shopper would register their return online using our online returns portal. They would get their carrier and choose their label. And then the return is sent back via our own end-to-end managed network. So the carrier would send it all the way back to the retailer, and we would track that journey all the way back and communicate with the carriers where necessary. And then the returns arrive back at the retailer's warehouse. So just an overview of what that online portal looks like from the customer's perspective is they would go onto the online returns portal that would be linked to from your returns policy. It's completely branded to the retailer to really help continue that branded experience that was offered to them at pre-purchase and while they made their purchase. And then they would log in using their order number and their postcode. And then they're shown a replica of their order basket, so that they can pick what items they're returning and why. And the reason that I personally think this is really great is because you can capture return reasons in a really consistent way, as opposed to, you know, when you've got a bit of paperwork in your parcel and you're having to scroll on it, you know, didn't fit around the arms or it's too small. The return reasons that you're capturing are very qualitative, and you not getting a consistent metric by which you can measure. Because, you know, how do you consistently say everything is too big if you're having to interpret lots of variations of too big that have been scrawled onto paperwork? So by giving kind of a stock list of return reasons that shoppers can choose from, you can really easily drill down into the data and see exactly how many of your products were too big, exactly how many of them were too small. And there's no need to kind of have to interpret pre-printed kind of returns forms then. And people can obviously then give you additional information if they want to through the portal as well. You can then choose the carrier. So the customer would give them the option to pick one of their local carrier options. So whether that's like DPD, InPost, Raw Mail, rather than having to get their label by going specifically to their website, they can pick through the Rebound portal which carrier is most convenient to them. And then they have their QR code, which they can just go into the drop-off point and show their phone, and then that's their QR code to get their label then as well. So I thought that would just kind of help you understand what Rebound does and where we fit into this journey, and what kind of smarter return journey we're offering for customers compared to the pre-printed return labels or the contacting customer services that might currently be on offer. And then we're more than just a returns portal. So as I mentioned, we've got 270 carrier services globally, all through one platform. We remove the headache of parcel movement and cross-border returns. So things coming back from Europe, for example, there was loads of additional challenges around this when Brexit hit. So we kind of handle all of that side of things for retailers, and there's a full visibility of returns as well. So there's no surprises at the warehouse. You will have full visibility of what's coming back, why it's coming back, and where it is in the journey, so that you know that things aren't getting lost, and you know what kind of stock to anticipate back to help with better stock planning. And then we've got returns plans for businesses of all sizes, so that your return solution can scale with you. So we implemented these last year to really help retailers of all sizes, whether they're kind of enterprise, global retailers or total startups, to get their hands on the same returns technology used by our other clients, such as Asos, Pretty Little Thing, Gymshark, River Island. And these are just a snapshot of some of the clients that we work with. But our startup plans will really help you get a return solution in place that works for you, for your size, and that can scale with you, so that as your business grows and your needs become more complex, your return solution can grow with it. Because it's really important to get returns right from the off, rather than waiting until you're really well established and then trying to implement a return solution, by which point you've already got lots of systems in place that you don't want to disrupt. Your customers already know the returns process. It's really great to get that returns process embedded right from the start. So that's a kind of the whistle-stop tour of Rebound and kind of what returns are. So in this session, I'll be taking you through the current returns landscape and how COVID-19 has impacted this, what shoppers want from a returns experience and how this has changed, particularly with the coronavirus pandemic, and how to evaluate your own returns process and write a great returns policy. So I encourage you to get involved. Throughout the session, I'll be putting your returns knowledge to the test, asking for your opinion on how you find returns. So you can get involved using Zoom's chat feature. This just saves me kind of rambling at you for 40 minutes. It'd be really great to get your feedback as well. So I'm going to give you one to start with. So cast your minds back to when you last returned something. Who did you have a particularly great returns experience with when you were returning something online? So I'll wait for some responses to come in. This would be really great if I could see the chat feature.
Oh, no worries, Laura.
Oh, there we go. Got it up now. Cool. So we've got quite a few coming in. Asos, always Asos. Banana Republic. That's interesting. I've not heard of that one before. So I'll have to have a look at their returns experience. But yeah, Asos is a great one, and they really set the benchmark for returns. And you know, that's why we're really proud to be working with them. They were one of our first customers, so promise that I didn't plant those responses. Gymshark is another great one. Oh yeah, Banana Republic is part of the Gap group. Okay, cool. So it sounds like you've all kind of had some experience with returning online then, and know what a good returns experience looks like. Oh, HelloFresh always credit me for items they forget to send. They do. They are good at doing that, but they really should remember to send it in the first place. So yeah, we've all had kind of great returns experiences with retailers such as Asos, but returns are on the rise. So 39% of retailers have seen an increase in returns since the outbreak of the pandemic. That's obviously in line with online sales increasing as well. And at Rebound, we saw 37% more returns in December 2020 than December 2019. So Christmas, while we're in the pandemic, obviously everyone was buying their Christmas presents online. Perhaps quite a few people got those Christmas presents wrong. So we saw a real spike in returns over the Christmas period. And what I think is interesting is that this behaviour is here to stay. So 60% of shoppers will continue to shop online after the pandemic as much as they do now. So even the people that previously hated shopping online have now gotten used to this new way of shopping. With the stores closed, they had no other means to get their hands on the things that they needed other than to shop online. And yet, despite this, returns often don't make the agenda. So for retailers kind of making plans on what they're going to focus on in 2021, 2022, or retailers just looking to start out, the to-do list will probably include things like delivery optimization, sustainability, which is obviously fantastic, mobile apps, new platforms, delivery drones, you name it, but returns often don't make that list, which is why we end up with delivery pages that look really kind of smart and clean and clear, whilst returns pages continue to look like this one here in the bottom right, where I've graciously blocked out the retailer name. I'm not here to name and shame anybody. You probably can't read it very well, but just to read you kind of a snippet of it, it starts by saying this returns policy applies to goods ordered under a contract with retailer name and goods ordered under a contract with third-party seller, and it goes on. In my experience, if in a returns policy, the very first sentence contains the word contract twice, it's probably been written by a lawyer and isn't very consumer friendly. And shoppers are just going to read that and completely just like disengage with your brand. And we know that shoppers are looking at returns policies before they even make a purchase. So if they're looking at that and seeing, well, this actually sounds like a nightmare, it sounds like it's going to be really hard to return to you, they probably won't purchase anything in the first place. And this kind of further echoes my point that delivery gets all the attention. So looking at kind of news articles that have been around recently, it's like van with no man, Amazon registers a patent for autonomous delivery fleet, which by my understanding is a van that drives to a central location and then loads of little robots hop out of the back and go and deliver parcels, which seems very bizarre. Screwfix are trialing a 30-minute delivery service. You can get your products in 30 minutes. And then again with Amazon introducing this cute little robot called Scout. So delivery is being optimized and optimized and optimized over and over again, whilst returns are being forgotten about and people are just using the same pre-printed return labels that have been around for years, but they're costly, they're not sustainable, they don't allow you to offer your customer choice, they don't give you visibility, and there's a whole range of problems that go along with those return labels. And shoppers care about returns. So while retailers might be pushing it to the bottom of the agenda, shoppers actually really care about returns. 67% of shoppers check a returns policy before they check out, and 92% say that the range of return options is an important consideration when deciding where to shop. So even before they've placed an order with you, they're looking at your returns proposition to understand what the process is if something goes wrong. If I buy this t-shirt and it doesn't fit, can I return it really easily? If this lamp doesn't work in the space, is it a problem to return it? Can I return it for free? Because customers want that reassurance that the money that they're parting with, they can get back easily if something isn't right. And they can also compare you against your competitors. So Asos is a great example. If you're they sell lots and lots of different kind of products, lots of different little black dresses. If you're selling clothing, why would somebody buy from you when they could buy from Asos and get a very similar product and have that really great returns experience? So these are the kind of questions that you've got to look at and think, well, comparatively and compared to my competition, how does my returns proposition stack up? So what do shoppers want from a returns experience? What are they looking for? So another question for you is like, when returning something, what do you care about most? Perhaps it's free returns, perhaps the fact that you get your refund really quickly. What is it that you care about most? So pop your answers in the chat. Speed of refund, yeah, that's a big one. So people always want their money back really quickly. Ease of return, where to drop it off. So yeah, also not having to go and queue up at the post office. Can you drop it off at a local locker nearby to your work, for example, rather than near your house? Hassle-free returns and convenience, that's coming up a lot. Free returns, green carrier options, which is an interesting one, and I'll touch more on sustainability a bit later, but that's something that's kind of coming up a lot more, as well as shoppers wanting to be more sustainable and wanting more sustainable options from their retailers. They mostly just buy from retailers where returns are free, and that's the same as me. I'm very much a free returns kind of person. So I'll take you through then, like, what our research and other research has found shoppers want from a returns experience. So shoppers want choice. 60% of shoppers find returns convenient when there are 3 or more return options available. So if you're just putting one Royal Mail label in the parcel, that's not very convenient to them. And coming back to one of the points that was made in the chat of ease of being able to drop it off where they want, if their nearest post office is 15-20 minutes away and is notorious for having really long queues, that's not a convenient return option. They would like the choice of where they can return. And we saw that through COVID, this really changed for shoppers. So if you look at this table, pre-COVID, 65% of returns were being registered and going through Royal Mail, and only 35% were going through Asda to You. So we deliberately looked at our clients that were offering Royal Mail, which is your kind of more standard return option. It's kind of the old trusty favourite, everyone knows where the post office is, versus a return option such as Asda that allows you to return as part of your weekly shop. So pre-COVID, Royal Mail, unsurprisingly, was carrying the majority of the volume. But 2 weeks into lockdown, this has shifted completely. And actually 65% of people were then returning via Asda. So they were choosing to drop their parcel off as part of their weekly shop rather than making additional trips to the post office. And we expect that this behaviour is going to be here to stay. So we're going to continue kind of monitoring this now as we emerge from lockdown. Do people kind of snap back to using the post office, or are people getting more used to using these other return methods such as Asda to You, InPost, Collect Plus, all of those different services? So we're going to be keeping a really close eye on that one. And we've already spoken about this a little bit, free returns. So 80% of shoppers expect free returns, me included. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people, when they come to craft a great returns policy, their minds will instantly go to free returns as a quick win. Obviously, for smaller retailers and people just starting out, free returns aren't always on the cards. They're not financially viable, but there are some alternatives that you could offer to free returns. So, for example, you could deduct the returns cost from the shopper's refund. So if returns aren't free, our research found that shoppers prefer to have the return deducted from their refund rather than paying upfront for the return. So they've already paid out for the item. They don't then want to have to pay out more money to return it back to you. Instead, if they've bought kind of a £15 item and the return is £4, just refund them the difference, just refund them that 11 to save them having to kind of pay out again. Loyalty schemes. So consider offering free returns to just your best customers. So perhaps those that have an account with you or buy a lot with you. Or alternatively, you could utilize a subscription model for free returns. So you can see I've put a banner here for an example retailer. It says like, hey babes, want to join the club? Unlimited free next day delivery and returns, just $19.99 for the year. And these free next day delivery subscriptions are always around. I think I must have spent £50 having them with various different retailers, because when your delivery is £6, but you can get delivery for the year for a tenner, it's a bit of a no-brainer to kind of pay the extra just on the off chance that you order something again. But what we're yet to see is retailers group returns in with this proposition. So if you up the price slightly, how much money could you save your customers while still clawing back some of the returns cost by offering a subscription service for returns? So I put in here a free returns case study, and obviously I mentioned at the start that we power returns for Gymshark, and Gymshark started working with Rebound in Black Friday 2017, and at that time that they decided to launch with free returns. I thought Gymshark would be a really great example to share with you, because Gymshark are a notorious growth story. It started with just one guy making t-shirts in his garage, working part-time at some pizza company, can't remember which one off the top of my head, and now they are a unicorn business. They're making millions and millions of pounds. They're a hugely successful business. And since launching with Rebound and launching free returns, Gymshark have seen a £16 increase in average order value globally, from £58 to £74, a 204% increase in returning customers, and a 90% increase in new customer acquisition. So that kind of touches to what Helen was talking about earlier, and how much does it cost you to acquire new customers. And a 4.5% increase in their global returns rate, from 9% to 13.5%. Now, I know an increase in returns sounds a bit daunting for some people, but when you consider all of the other factors, such as the increase in order value, the increase in returning customers and new customer acquisition, the money that they're making from those things are far outweighing kind of the cost of having that increased return rate. And then in the USA, they had a £17 increase in average order value and a 224% increase in returning customers as well. So a really great success story there for free returns, as well as a bit of a case study for Rebound as well, which is always nice to see. So what else do customers want from a returns experience? Well, it came up in the chats, they want easy returns. 20% of shoppers say an easy to follow process contributes most to a positive returns experience. So coming back to the returns policy example that I showed you earlier, this one here with kind of talking about contracts and there's no clear kind of step-by-step instructions, versus the one on the right, which is for a customer of ours called Fourth and Reckless, who have a really clear step-by-step return instructions. They've also gone as far as to do like a video for how to return as well. You know, which one of these would you find easiest? If you were looking at a retailer and you were deciding where to buy from, if these were your two options, which one would you be more drawn towards? Because I know personally, I would definitely go for the one on the right, where it's got the really simple return instructions. It's really friendly, it's in a great brand voice. And it's very clear that if I want to return something, I'm not going to be greeted by loads of legal red tape and lots of complicated information. This retailer accepts that returns happens and they want to make that process as easy for you, because a return is a sign that something has gone wrong. And if something's gone wrong, like the item didn't fit or it's arrived faulty, the last thing that you want to be doing is then further adding to that negative experience. And a return, if the return process isn't convenient, they just won't shop with you again. And if it's a nightmare, again, they're just not going to carry on purchasing with you. So with the returns journey, you've really got a chance to turn around a negative thing and make it into a positive one. So yes, we're sorry your product wasn't quite right. Don't worry, you can return really, really easily. And as part of that, we hope you shop with us again, rather than if it's not right, it's a nightmare to return, the customer is just going to go, bloody hell, I won't buy with them again. Fast refunds. Again, this came up in our chats. So unfortunately, we're not talking about how fast you get your product back. It's all about the refund speed. So 67% of shoppers expect a refund in 3 days or less of sending their returns back to you, which is very quick. I will say that perhaps the shoppers' expectations are a bit out of kilter with what's achievable there. But with Rebound's returns portal, you will have kind of visibility of all of those returns. You'll know what's coming back and why, and that it's on its way back to you. So you can go ahead and process those refunds. And obviously, when customers don't get their money back, they're going to start calling you and emailing you and tweeting you. And all of those things kind of cost money. They set off kind of a negative tone, particularly on social media. It's giving your brand a bad rep. So by giving customers their money back, it's really helping head off those CS calls, because I hate to break it to you that shoppers don't care whether you've got your product back or not. All they care about is whether they're going to get their money back. And when it comes to the pandemic, a quarter of shoppers now say they expect their refunds to be even quicker than they were before. So you might think that shoppers would be a bit more lenient because of the pandemic, but actually they're wanting their money back quicker. Perhaps that's because they're shopping online more. Perhaps that's because, money might be a bit tighter, so that if something's not right, they do need that money back quickly. But I thought that was really surprising that they're not very lenient when it comes to retailers going through the pandemic. And then time frame. So 57% of shoppers believe the returns window should be at least 30 days. Obviously, in the UK, the legal requirement is 14 days, but over half of shoppers believe it should be at least double this. And I think this kind of comes back to refund speed as well. So while shoppers would like the 30 days to return, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to take the full 30 days. It's important to remember that customers want their money back just as much as you want your item. So they're not just going to kind of sit and hold on to it forever if it's not right. And retailers clocked onto this during the pandemic, which I thought was great. So just 2 weeks into the first lockdown, IMRG reported that almost half of retailers had already extended their returns policies. So there's a few examples here from Brand Alley, Nike and Fatbase, all of whom extended their returns policies throughout the pandemic. So what we're kind of advising our retailers now is don't just snap your returns policy back, particularly if it was only 14 days to begin with. Customers have got used to being able to take their time to return. Consider keeping your longer returns time frame. And if you look at the data, you'll probably find that the majority of your returns are still coming back within that 14-day window anyway, because customers want their money back. So question time again then. Who likes having to contact a business's customer service team? Whether that's a retailer, whether that's to sort out your car insurance or your dodgy internet, who likes having to contact a business's customer service team? I know I definitely don't. Chat's gone again. Oh, classic tech problems.
No, no one does.
Yeah, great. It's exactly the same for retail. So they want it contact free. They don't want to have to call up customer services and arrange a return. 58% of shoppers say that needing to contact your customer services as part of the returns process is a negative experience. Plus, you shouldn't want them contacting you either. CS calls are costly, they're time consuming, and they can quickly overrun your teams at peak times. One retailer even told us that their CS calls cost them as much as £6, which is just absolutely extortionate. And especially then if customers are having to contact you a couple of times. And you might think, well, I'm only getting, if you're really small, only getting a couple of calls a day or a week, and it's all really manageable. But as your business scales, that is not going to carry on being a sustainable, manageable format for capturing return requests. And your customers are probably finding it quite inconvenient. So you might look at it as an opportunity to speak to your customers and find out why they're returning. But ultimately, it's putting your customers off and they're not enjoying that as part of the returns experience. And like I said, it's not setting yourself up for it's not future-proofing your business. So the one that I found quite surprising, this actually came up earlier when I asked what people expected from a returns experience, but it's paperless returns. So historically, retailers were shipping pre-printed return labels in every outbound order, but now over 3/4 of shoppers support retailers no longer included pre-printing return labels to reduce paper wastage. And lots of retailers are following in the footsteps of Asos. So Asos was mentioned by most of you when I asked who offers a really great returns experience. And you're right, they do. And their returns experience is also paperless. So they removed 320,000 kilograms of returns paperwork by going paperless. And what I thought was really great is that they communicated this to their customers in a way that resonates with shoppers. So this was equivalent to the weight of 3 blue whales, 55 elephants, and 50 T-Rexes. So just really bringing it back down to that kind of human level in a way that everybody understands why this is good for the planet. They also explained that they'd be saving the equivalent of 8,000 trees and there'd be 312 tons of CO2 emissions reduced. And because, like I mentioned at the start, I am a massive returns nerd. When Asos went paperless, I spent a lot of time kind of crawling through their social media to see what kind of feedback that they got and their Trustpilot reviews. And the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. And it wasn't necessarily because they'd gone paperless, it was because that they did a really great job of communicating with their customers that they were doing this to be more sustainable and to cut down on wasted paper. And that's the part that really set them apart and really resonated with their shoppers. And because of that, we've seen lots more retailers following suit. So here's an example here from Misguided, where they put a banner on their website to explain that they were going paperless. So they stopped dispatching pre-printed return labels, and instead everything went through an online returns portal. Because you've also got to think about that with, as I mentioned at the start, the different return rates. If we take the highest sector of fashion, where return rates are around 40%, at least 60% of the return labels are never getting used. So it is just a total waste, particularly if it's done on like a sticker as well. So it's on that peely plastic that's not recyclable. It's really time for the returns label to go in, I'm going to say go in the bin, but that's wrong. It's time to ditch the returns label and stop putting them in the parcel. So that's not the only kind of way that shoppers have been wanting retailers to be more sustainable. It's not just about paperless returns. Since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, shoppers have become more environmentally conscious, with 75% of shoppers now saying that in 2021, they intend to shop more with brands, making their delivery and returns process more sustainable. But what has generated this shift towards shoppers thinking more sustainably? Well, you've probably seen headlines such as these in the news over the last year or so. So Venice Canal runs clear, with dolphins appearing in Italy's waterways, clear skies in Delhi and Mumbai, and then the BBC News article that COVID drove a record emissions drop in 2020. So shoppers have been able to see everywhere just good news stories about the environment since COVID. And I think it's been a real kind of positive of this whole thing. Obviously, the pandemic has been awful, but these are some kind of great things to come out of it. And everybody is now starting to think a lot more differently, which I hope we kind of continue that mindset as we now move out of lockdown. And it's also down to powerful media influences. So Netflix is not short of documentaries and TV shows that all address environmental issues. So you've got like a Seaspiracy, Our Planet, A Plastic Ocean. There's a whole range of things on there. And since watching the David Attenborough documentary, A Life on Our Planet, 95% of shoppers say that they are now more conscious of their environmental footprint. So in my opinion, Sir David Attenborough is a true influencer, which just warms my heart, bless him. But retailers don't need to bear the entire cost of being more sustainable themselves. So again, kind of electric vehicles and green green return options came up earlier when I asked what people expected from a returns experience. 71% of shoppers would be willing to pay for a more sustainable return option. So where I mentioned earlier about 80% of customers wanting a free return, that thinking shifts if that return option is more sustainable. And they're looking at how much extra would they be prepared to pay for a return option. We've got kind of some different cost brackets here, but some people are willing to pay, up to £2 extra for a more sustainable return option, which I just think is great. So moving on to evaluating your own returns then, how to assess your own returns proposition. So once you know what a customer wants from a returns experience, how can you evaluate your own returns to check if you're meeting customer expectations? So my recommendation, which is what I do for lots of retailers, is to go undercover and check the returns process out for yourself. Get into the mindset of your shoppers, buy something from yourself and return it, and take an impartial look at your returns policy. Are there any inconsistencies? Can you easily find the below information, such as the length of return window, the cost of the return, the available return methods, the refund promise? Is everything really easily communicated to your customers? One of the common mistakes that we find is that things are often done by different people. So whether that's different teams within your business, or whether you kind of outsource some things. So your returns policy, your returns paperwork, and your website might all be looked after by completely different people and completely different teams. And because of that, you might end up with inconsistencies across the journey. So I've seen it before where a returns policy has said the customer has 60 days. Meanwhile, their website header says they only have 30, and then their paperwork says they have 100. So it's all about making sure that things are consistent, because if they're not, people are just going to be ringing up your customer service teams to say, well, what on earth am I meant to be doing here? Your information isn't clear. I really don't know what I'm meant to be doing. And again, if they can't find the key information, such as the length of the return window and the cost of the return, they're just going to be calling you up to say, well, you know, how long have I got to return? Is the return free? How do I return to you? When am I going to get my refund back? So audit your full returns journey. I've put this map on here, and I believe the slides will be circulated afterwards, so you can kind of use this as your guide. But a returns policy isn't the only bit that matters. So returns come into play pre-purchase, purchase, and post-purchase. So pre-purchase on the website homepage. So have you got a banner on there that tells people about the returns? On your product pages, have you got a reminder on there that returns are really easy, that returns are free? So if a customer is considering, do I want to put something into basket? They've got that reminder there of, actually, yeah, I'll put it in and I'll go buy it because returns are free and returns are really easy. And then, like we mentioned, returns come up, the returns policy comes up pre-purchase, because 67% are looking at that returns policy before they even check out. And then again, on the basket page, so just before they're about to buy, just that extra reminder when they're going through everything of, now, do I really need all this? Again, that they've got that reminder that they can return really easily. And I can't remember the statistic off the top of my head, but one of our customers added a returns banner to their basket page and saw, I think it was about a 40% increase in conversion just from adding a returns banner to their basket page. And then the purchase, similarly to the basket page, the checkout page, again, just adding that reminder. And then in the confirmation email, so once they've placed their order, they're instantly kind of got the signposts back to your returns policy if anything's not right, so that if something goes wrong, you're already kind of getting ahead of that and trying to turn that into a positive experience by outlining the really easy returns process to them. And then post-purchase, obviously, this is where you would expect returns to come into play in terms of the post-purchase emails. Again, putting the reminder on your website. So if they have to return and they go to your website, they don't have to dig around to find your returns policy again. Your returns paperwork, whether you're going to remove that completely, or if not, making sure it's completely consistent with your returns policy. And then again, they're checking your returns policy to see how they actually return. And then they might also look at your FAQ and help pages as well. So when you update your returns policy, it's important to make sure that you're updating all of the areas where you talk about returns, such as your FAQs, help pages, and your terms and conditions. So you can complete a returns scorecard. Here's one that we kind of created that you can download in our interactive returns worksheet. And there's other helpful resources in there as well that will help you kind of identify where to start with a returns project. And we've really kind of mapped this against customer expectations. So, for example, most customers expect returns to be 30 days or more, which is why if you're offering a 31-day returns policy, you would score a green in that area. So I recommend going through and giving yourself a scorecard so you can see how you need to improve your returns process. Obviously, you can start with the reds, and that's where you need to focus your most attention. Or if you've not started yet, you haven't got a returns policy yet, you can use this as kind of a guideline for what makes a really great returns experience and use it as your benchmark. So if things are mostly red, you could be doing a lot more to make your returns policy more inviting. Remember that 67% of shoppers consider your returns policy before purchasing. Mostly amber, your returns policy sounds pretty decent. Just focus on the boxes which have room for improvement to help you leverage returns to the competitive advantage. And if they're mostly green, you're crushing it. Just make sure that behind the scenes, your process doesn't disappoint the strong expectations that your returns policy is giving off. So you can download this worksheet, as I mentioned. It's linked here in the slides that I believe will be circulated, but you can also get it from the Rebound resources page, and our website is reboundreturns.com. So that's kind of the end of my session, but I welcome kind of any questions that anybody's got. And if anybody's got any further questions or like to carry on the discussion at all, my email address is there on the screen. But if not, I'll open it up to any questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see kind of any questions that come through, because I couldn't see the chat feature very well. Have you seen anything through, Oriana or Helen?
I don't think there's any questions in the chat box at the moment, but I was really interested in some of the stats that you had there, and in particular, I'm just wondering if you've got any really good case studies of, you know, before and after implementing your system, you know, what difference that has made to the conversion rate, because as returns are so important to shoppers, and it's something that, you know, they look at before they're buying. Mm-hmm. Presumably implementing a solution like yours would increase the conversion rate, and I should add it to my slides.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just trying to bring my slide back up so I don't butcher it. But yeah, it's like I went through with Gymshark, obviously, when they launched with Rebound, they saw kind of huge improvements. Like I mentioned, that 16% increase in average order value, and the 204% increase in returning customers, and that 90% increase in new customer acquisition. And it's something that we're kind of actively working with our customers on looking at, because what I think is the hardest kind of part with a returns experience is they're so blind to returns beforehand that they don't have the data to kind of accurately report on things. So by working with Rebound, all of a sudden they've got all this data and they can start more accurately reporting on what impact the returns are having on their business. One thing that we do see is that customer service calls decrease from around anywhere between 20 and 40% for our customers, which is obviously a huge cost saving to retailers, and it's also a huge indicator as well that the returns process is much easier, because they're not needing to contact the retailer to find out how to do the return. And like I mentioned, when CS calls can cost kind of £6 a pop, and return and refund related CS calls tend to be the second highest, if not the highest, cause of customer contact, that cost can soon rack up, especially if people are calling up 2 or 3 times to chase down a return.
Yes. So there are a couple of questions now in the chat box, I think, Laura.
Yeah, I think one of them comes in and says, for a retailer juggling lots of new projects, whose job should this be to look at returns? So this is a great question, and it's a question that we get asked a lot, actually, is kind of who should look after returns. And when we're speaking to retailers, we're talking to lots of different stakeholders, anybody from logistics to marketing, and with lots of retailers, they tend to leave it to the logistics team and just make it a logistics issue. But actually, as I mentioned, returns touches so many points within the journey that it's important to get a returns team together and talk to different departments to understand how the returns process needs to operate. So talk to your marketing teams to understand what's going on from a marketing lens. You know, perhaps the marketing activity is increasing your returns. Talk to your e-commerce teams to understand more about your returns policy. Obviously, the logistics team is quite an obvious one because they're the ones dealing with the actual kind of processing of the returns. And we encourage you that you have someone to kind of head up this returns working group. So for big businesses, we tend to see people who have like head of returns or returns managers whose day job it is to just look at returns all day, which is, I mean, I love my job, but if I had to go into a different profession, that just sounds great to me. Some people think that sounds like an absolute nightmare, but I think that sounds really interesting. Another question is, I'd like to offer free returns, but would love to refund early, but I'm nervous about customers sending back wrong items. How would you suggest the best way to combat this is? That's a great question. It's something that comes up a lot, is when people want to refund their customers, give them the money back, but when you've not actually got the item back in your hands, how do you trust your customers, and how do you trust that what they've said they're sending back is what they're sending back, and that they're not sent back a brick instead of a pair of shoes, for example. And again, it comes back to these customer service calls. I think if you look at the cost saving on customer service calls, so people aren't ringing you to chase up their refund anymore, they've got that, they're not calling you, versus the cost of the absolute minority who send back a brick instead of a pair of shoes, you'll find there is actually a huge cost saving there. One of our customers, they refunded £36,000 worth of products early. So before they even got it back, they triggered £36,000 worth of refunds. And when they got all of the products back, they found that there was only a £30 discrepancy between what they'd refunded and what they'd received. So with CS calls costing a few pounds, it didn't take long for them to kind of claw that money back in CS savings. Other questions? So offering choice sounds like a good idea, but if I don't have the volume, how can I get shipping accounts with all of these options? So that's really where Rebound's plans come in. So at Rebound, we're integrated with lots of different carriers so that you don't have to be. So you don't have to go to Royal Mail and try and get a contract with them and then go to Hermes or go to InPost and try and set up all of your own kind of contracts, because particularly if you're a small business, not only is that quite daunting, you also probably won't get particularly great carrier rates because they're often based on volume. So by integrating with Rebound, you get access to all of those, and we handle all of that. So you just kind of connect with Rebound and then you can offer as much choice as you would like. For our starter plans, it's around 3 different return options to give your customers really good choice without kind of overwhelming them. So yeah, that's how you can do that. Is integrate with Rebound is the answer. What would you say is the top 2 benefits of offering free returns are? So free returns, like I mentioned, are a great way to kind of draw customers in. 80% of customers do expect free returns. So it's important to kind of try and meet those customer expectations where you can. Obviously, one of the benefits of free returns is that customers have that confidence that they can buy with you. It's not going to cost them anything extra. So it's a huge kind of satisfaction piece, I think, for free returns. But again, it's also worth considering kind of, does that make financial sense for your business? And what alternatives could you put in place if free returns aren't on the cards? So your research suggests that I should make returns really easy, but I don't want stock to be sent back. Otherwise, I might not be able to sell it again and be left with dead stock. What would you advise here? So there's a few different options. Quite often people don't want stuff back. So if you perhaps have really kind of fast turning stock, so when you get something back, it's no longer going to be in stock, or if it's something that you perhaps can't resell once you've got it back, for hygiene reasons or anything like that, Rebound has a range of kind of sustainable return options that make sure nothing goes into landfill. So we're really big on 0 to landfill. So we can kind of intercept those parcels. If you say, I don't want these products back, and then we can then send them to kind of local recycling plants or donate them to charity, or perhaps if it's clothing, maybe implement it into a rental channel. So there's a whole range of options there. So if you really kind of don't want returns back, then there are options. But equally, I would say if you get returns back, there's lots of things that can go on that we can support you with to make sure you can resell those products again, like cleaning them and getting them ready for resale. So I don't know if there's any other questions or comments. Take that silence as a no.
Well, I think it's time for our breakout sessions now. So what we're going to do, because the plan for this event is for it not to be just a standalone event, but the start of a whole community of e-commerce businesses sharing best practice and so on. So as part of that, you guys getting to know each other and network with each other is part of the idea as well. Not just us talking to you, but you talking to each other. So Rihanna is going to invite you in just a second into one of 2 breakout groups. So when you arrive in that breakout group, if you could please just put your camera on, so that the other people in the room can see you, and because that's just nice and friendly to get to know each other. And I'm going to give you all a topic to discuss in your sort of mini groups, which is around the topic of what are your key challenges for your e-commerce business in 2021. So I'm going to go into one of the groups, and Laura will be in the other. And we're just interested to hear what your key challenges are, because I think that will give us some great ideas for future events potentially, as well as helping you to get to know each other. So I'll see some of you in a breakout room in just a minute.